Welcome back. Today we're going to go further into one of our course books, and this is the one which I have for you, Shining Light on Transcendence. And we were talking a little bit about the search last time, but this time we'll start getting closer into the book. Now I want to show you another book which is a meditation book, Awakening the Luminous Mind, by Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche, and it's the Tibetan meditation for inner peace and joy. It's a lovely meditation, and you will find, if you do this meditation, go in and get really quiet, then you will be able to just see the background illumination of the mind coming forward to you, and you'll be able to rest in the light. So those are your two course books, and let us now start with what happened and why on earth I wrote that book. Well, one day a friend of mine called David Lorimer, who I've known for a very long time, said, "I've met this most amazing man." So who is this amazing man? Well, his name is Alain Forget, and you can tell from that he's probably French. And in English, of course, his surname spells forget, and that's no coincidence, because sometimes many of the things that he teaches are enormously important for you, you forget. So Alain Forget. In fact, he isn't French, he is now an Italian. He was brought up in France, and his father had large estates, so he's really a trust fund kid. And he's been able to devote himself throughout his life to honing his esoteric skills. What does that mean? That means that he has progressed in refining, and refining is the word, his own level of consciousness, until such a point that he had a breakthrough. The breakthrough we could call an awakening, if you like, but breakthrough is a good term, because at that point the ego structures within him collapsed completely, and he became, for several weeks, or 2 or 3 weeks, non-dual. Remember, we talked a little bit about duality last time, and just to remind you, because it's important, in the state that all of us are in, unless we've awoken, we are dual. That means there is an experiencer and the experienced. So when I look out at myself, I notice that I am an I looking out, and I see the world outside me, and that is duality, the two. Now in non-duality, the two become one, and there is the egoic structures, the feeling of I, just disappear completely, and one is left with this cosmic expansion of yourself and feelings of yourself. He, in fact, in his early life, his parents broke up, and he was left with his father until the age of 7 or the age of 9, died of a heart attack, and he saw that. And then his mother came back and looked after him. And one of the things he was able to do was to put subtle pressure on his mother to do what he wanted. One of the things he didn't particularly like doing was going to school, so his schooling was rudimentary. Each year, when his father was alive, he sent him to England, and so his English is extremely good. And then after that, he of course, from his family, had a lot of money, and he was interested in gold, trying to refine his sense of self and God. Now, that really doesn't give you the proper feel for him, because he is in fact a very experienced, yes, very experienced person in terms of the structure of the mind of other people. And what that means is that he was able, over the course of time, to build his own philosophy. Now, his life was very simple. He got himself a teacher, and for those of you who are interested, he used to see his teacher either monthly or weekly, depending on the circumstances. And his teacher was in fact a doctor. And the teacher would ask him to come down and see him in his waiting room. And sometimes the teacher would see him immediately, and at other times he would leave him in the waiting room, maybe for the whole afternoon, and then see him at the close of the clinic. So he had a teacher who was really experienced, who had developed himself, and who was able to start Alan on the point of refining himself. It wasn't long before he found that in his refining process, he needed really three things. One was to know what to do with his mind, so he was taught the Zen process of watching the mind. The second one was to go to a place where there were special energies. And for him, Chartres Cathedral was an important one. And also the road of the Medallion in France. There's a chapel there which has very special energies. And for those of you who are interested and in London, let me recommend that you go to St. Faith's Chapel in Westminster Abbey, because that too has a very special energy. You can go into that chapel and meditate. So his life became very much focused on refining himself. And he had, in his late 20s, his first breakthrough. And by that, or his first awakening, in fact, his personal egoic structures fell away, and he became non-dual. And he then expanded, of course, his sense of self expanded to fill the cosmos. So he had some very wide experiences, which are known in other people to be along the line of refinement and spiritual growth. Now, this went on for a number of years, and then he had his second one, which was fascinating, because you may remember that the Buddha, when he awakened under the Bo tree, spent the night in conflict with the demons. Jesus also fought with devils before he awoke. And so many people in the literature have, if you like, a temporary psychotic episode before they awoke. And the temporary psychosis, in Alan's case, was going down into a swimming pool and seeing a great, large, big spider, I mean an enormous spider, that went over the entire swimming pool. And that was really his great process, is trying to scare him, make him afraid. Because if he's afraid, then he wouldn't be able to go on through his breakthrough. And he held his mind still, and the spider died away, and he then had his breakthrough. Now, does the ego go away forever? No, it doesn't. It tends to reform, but it reforms in a different way. And so your consciousness is left quite different after a breakthrough, particularly if it becomes permanent. Then you are always in the present. You never act. You don't act because there is no you to act. And you don't plan and look forward because you're in the present, only in the present, and there's no time if you're only in the present. And you also see things differently. When you look at the world, you tend not to see people in their ordinary form, but you tend to see people as energy. And that means then that if you are in the presence of a man who's non-dual, he gets a clock. If you're in the presence of a man who is non-dual, then he would be very special, and it's important for us to know what is happening. Now, as he progressed with his own cleaning, and after his two breakthroughs, and when his mind had changed, he then developed something else. What he developed is the ability to give light. And what does that mean? It means that he would feel a click inside his chest, round about there. And when the click occurred, then he found that other people would see light, and other people would feel energy. Now this is quite remarkable. How is it that somebody, when they have a click in their chest, can start being felt as having energy and light? And particularly if you could see and feel these. So it became important for me that we actually thought a little bit about this and maybe did some science on it. And I asked him, is it because you were meditating? And he said, no, it's not meditation. What I do is I step back into the void. Let's talk a bit about the void. So, what is the void? What does it mean? The void contains nothing, because that is what the description of. And you can enter the void during the changes which occur when you awaken. And it means that there is a fundamental change in your consciousness, and there are changes in your perception of things. You can look at people and you see them very much as energy, and so you get a very good idea of what their state is. If you ask them, somebody who's non-dual, ask them if they are acting, they will tend to say no, because they're in the moment, held in the moment, and there is nothing there to act for them because their personal sense of I has disappeared. But I did say that it reforms in some cases, and so they obviously do have a functioning I, although it functions very differently. So then there's a little bit about Alain Fouché, very remarkable man, who's able, by stepping back inside himself into the void, he's able to interconnect with the person who's in front of him. So the person will see energy and light, and feel energy running inside him. And it's amazing. You remember I said that I asked him to begin with if I could do science on him, that is, put EEG electrodes on him, measure his heart rate and all sorts of things like this. And he said quite simply no. But the good news is that he did later say yes. And so we've got some real signs of what is happening when Alain Fouché feels the click, steps back into the void, and then is able to connect with you in the most remarkable way. Now, I'm going to talk more about this, but just for a summary, think of this: an amazing Frenchman who's been through a period of tuition with 2 teachers and sitting for long periods of time, watching his mind in places with special energy like Chartres or the Chapel of the Medal in France, Notre Dame before it was damaged was another place. And although I don't think he went to Westminster Abbey, the Chapel of St. Faith's is certainly another very good place. And after a long period of sitting in silence and watching his mind, he had his breakthroughs. Now, he is highly intelligent. He was a pilot in his younger days and flew all around the Middle East. This was something which I had in common with him because I used to fly aeroplanes too. I was given a flying scholarship by the government when I was 17, and I was able to fly a plane then. Can you imagine anything nicer than as a 17-year-old being able to fly your own plane? I mean, not your own plane, the club's plane, by yourself when I'd learned how to do it. And of course I had to do solo trips and navigate and so on. So he was a pilot too and flew all over North Africa. I mainly flew over north of Europe, Norway, Sweden, a lot around there. Okay, so we're going to take what Alain Fouché's philosophy is next time. So you can look forward to that, because he has a most wonderfully structured philosophy where if you practice it, you will be able to also awaken. And it includes dreams, it includes looking at the mind, it includes drilling into the mind, and there are ways of doing this. And there is, in fact, he's written a book on this, and there are 4 Ds that you have to be concerned about, and we'll talk about the 4 Ds next time. So that's just a feeling for how I met Alain and how I became interested in what he did. Then, of course, I became interested in his philosophy. Then I started practicing some of the things that he taught, and it's a really interesting trip. So I look forward very much to this. And so I will just thank you all for watching and hope that you will look again next week. And most important, thank you all for those of you who did for coming to the meeting in Dulwich Hall. And we're putting up the tape on that. It's being cut by the Lion at the moment, one of his friends, and so we'll be putting that up. So thanks very much, and we'll see you next week.